August 7, 1942. At 02:14 hours, the first wave of United States Marines from the 1st Division stepped onto Beach Red at Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. Alongside their Garands and bars, some Marines carried a weapon the Japanese never planned for: the Winchester Model 12 shotgun. This pump-action firearm delivered firepower in a way Japanese military doctrine had not anticipated. Moving inland in the pre-dawn darkness, the Marines soon clashed with Japanese positions near the Lunga River. Those opening engagements revealed a major flaw in Japanese planning. The Imperial Army had trained for battles fought at distance with rifles and for bayonet charges or sword attacks up close. They had not accounted for the raw destructive power of shotguns, capable of firing as quickly as a Marine could pump the action. That oversight would prove devastating. On Guadalcanal, 2,200 Japanese defenders were about to face a weapon so effective that Germany had once tried to outlaw its use in World War I. The Winchester Model 12 could slam fire, meaning it could discharge round after round in rapid sequence, making it lethal in jungle fighting, cave assaults, and nighttime encounters across the Pacific. Each shell fired from the Model 12 carried 9 pellets of double-aught buckshot. Using the slam fire method, a Marine could unload 6 shells in under 3 seconds. That added up to 54 projectiles saturating the target in the same time it would take a Japanese soldier to squeeze off only 1 or 2 shots with a bolt-action rifle. The Model 12 already had a reputation before Guadalcanal. In the First World War, earlier U.S. shotguns were so effective in trench fighting that on September 15, 1918, the German government filed a protest through Swiss channels. Their complaint claimed that shotguns violated Article 23 of the Hague Convention by causing unnecessary suffering. The protest even warned that any prisoner captured with such a weapon could be executed. Secretary of State Robert Lansing responded firmly. The United States rejected the protest and warned that any harm to American prisoners would result in equal reprisals. No executions took place and the shotgun remained in use. Introduced in 1912 for hunters, the Winchester Model 12 had evolved into a purpose-built military weapon by 1942. The M12 trench gun featured a shortened 20-inch cylinder bore barrel compared to the 26 30-inch barrels on civilian models. It had a perforated steel heat shield and a bayonet lug. Most importantly, it kept the original design's lack of a trigger disconnector, meaning soldiers could slam fire simply by holding the trigger down and pumping the action. Though civilians rarely used this feature, military instructors saw its combat value immediately. Japanese tactical doctrine, described in U.S. War Department Manual TME 30-480 Handbook on Japanese Military Forces, 1944, relied heavily on night operations and close quarters combat. They distinguished between Kishu, night surprise attack, and Kyoshu, night force attack. Training emphasized stealth, infiltration, and fighting in the dark. Their success in China, Singapore in February 1942, and the Philippines reinforced the belief that Japanese troops could overwhelm Western forces once battles closed to bayonet distance. The U.S. landing on Guadalcanal on August 7, 1942, was America's first offensive move in the Pacific. Marine units carried riot-type shotguns and ammunition for both buckshot and slug use. Though the exact number of Model 12s present remains unclear, records confirm they were issued and employed. The real test came during the Battle of the Tenaru, also called the Ilu River, on August 21, 1942. Colonel Creighton Abrams led 916 men in a night assault across the sandbar at the river's mouth, a textbook example of Japanese doctrine. The result was disastrous. Of the 916 attackers, about 800 were killed. Marine artillery and machine guns took a toll, but in the close-range combat, the Model 12 played its intended role. Reports highlighted the increased effectiveness of concentrated firepower at short range. U.S. ordnance testing confirmed the shotgun's advantages. Standard military loads of .00 buckshot contained 9 .33 caliber pellets. At 20 yards, these retained enough velocity to punch through 3/4 of an inch of pine board, a common standard for simulating human tissue. At combat ranges of 20-30 yards, buckshot spread to roughly 30 inches, creating a dense pattern that reduced the need for precise aiming perfect for jungle combat where enemies were often glimpsed only briefly. The slam fire ability multiplied these strengths. Post-war tests showed skilled operators could unleash 5 to 6 rounds in under 3 seconds, rivaling or even exceeding the output of some automatic weapons at close range. Marines quickly developed tactical techniques with the Model 12. Defenders were trained to fire at ground level against crawling infiltrators, using ricochets from hard surfaces. In the jungle, they fired at movement or sound rather than waiting for clear targets, relying on the spread pattern to compensate. By 1943, use of the shotgun grew more refined. During the New Georgia campaign, June through August, Marines increasingly issued them to point men on jungle patrols. The firepower allowed immediate reaction to ambushes, often neutralizing multiple enemies with one shot. In nighttime defense, shotguns became essential against Japanese infiltration attempts, creating overlapping fields of deadly fire. Marines also applied them to what they called jungle lane shooting, blasting through thick vegetation that concealed enemy fighters. The spread of buckshot could hit hidden targets while simultaneously stripping away foliage cover. Later battles in the Central Pacific introduced a new challenge: Japanese cave defenses. Starting with Tarawa in November 1943 and continuing, in later campaigns, fortified caves and bunkers replaced traditional open defenses. In these confined and brutal fights, the Model 12 shotgun once again became a weapon of choice. At Peleliu on September 15, 1944, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had built one of the toughest defensive networks of the Pacific War. The island's coral ridges were filled with natural caves which Japanese engineers had expanded and reinforced. These positions were designed to survive heavy naval shelling and aerial bombardment, leaving U.S. forces no option but to fight their way inside at close range. In this brutal environment, the Winchester Model 12 shotgun showed its adaptability. Marines created cave-clearing tactics that took advantage of the shotgun's unique power. A common method was to fire 1 or 2 rounds into the cave entrance, letting the buckshot bounce off the interior rock. The ricocheting pellets created what Marines described as a storm of lead inside the confined spaces. Survivors later admitted that the effect was terrifying, not just because of casualties, but because the echoing metallic screech of buckshot in stone chambers seemed to come from every direction at once. The invasion of Saipan on June 15, 1944, pushed these tactics even further. Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito's 31,000 defenders had constructed layered defenses, learning from earlier battles. U.S. Marines answered with organized shotgun teams. Each team usually included 2 Marines with Model 12s, a bar, gunner for suppression, and 1 or 2 riflemen carrying grenades. These small assault units specialized in close-range fighting and were especially effective against bunkers and fortified caves. Saipan also introduced wider use of specialized ammunition. Double-aught buckshot stayed the standard load, but Marines began using solid slug rounds for longer-range precision and smaller birdshot to blast away vegetation that hid enemy positions. On July 7, 1944, Saipan saw the largest banzai attack of the war when between 3,000 and 4,000 Japanese soldiers launched a desperate charge. Most of the attackers were killed by artillery and machine guns, but in the sections where hand-to-hand fighting broke through, shotguns added critical firepower. Their ability to fire multiple projectiles without precise aim gave Marines an edge in chaotic night fighting. The next major test came at Iwo Jima from February 19th to March 26, 1945. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had created the most advanced defensive system of the Pacific Campaign. His plan included 11 miles of tunnels linking more than 1,500 caves, pillboxes, and hidden bunkers. Entrances were angled to deflect direct fire, and multiple exits prevented entrapment. Chambers were staggered to reduce the effect of flamethrowers and explosives. Even with these measures, the Model 12 shotgun remained effective. Marines improvised new methods like skip shooting, bouncing buckshot off tunnel walls to hit defenders hidden around corners. They also used more white phosphorus shells, which not only caused casualties but also produced smoke that forced Japanese troops into the open. Of the 21,000 Japanese defenders on Iwo Jima, Only 216 were captured alive, most of them severely wounded or unconscious when found. The fighting there proved that in close quarters cave battles, weapons like the Model 12 still had unmatched value. The last great campaign, Okinawa, began on April 1, 1945. It was the largest amphibious landing of the Pacific War. General Mitsuru Ushijima commanded 100,000 troops in the most extensive defensive system Japan had ever constructed. His operations, Officer Colonel Hiramichi Yahara, one of Japan's sharpest planners, built a strategy to bleed the Americans dry. By this stage, Japanese troops no longer wasted themselves on mass banzai charges. Instead, they fought from deeply prepared positions. American forces also refined their methods. Marines and soldiers used blowtorch and corkscrew tactics. Flamethrowers served as the blowtorch, while explosives and close-range weapons like the Model 12 acted as the corkscrew to root defenders out of caves and bunkers. The 82-day battle showed the full evolution of cave-clearing techniques. Production numbers for the Model 12 tell a different story from its reputation. Winchester's own records, examined by historian Herbert G. Howes, show that only 61,014 new Model 12 shotguns were made during World War II. Another 19,027 were repaired or refurbished, which led to confusion about totals. These weapons were issued across all U.S. services, Marines, Army, Navy, and Army Air Forces, not just to Marine rifle units. The Army Air Forces used them for airfield defense, while the Navy relied on them for ship security and landing parties. For a military of 12 million men, 61,014 shotguns meant they were never general-issue weapons. Instead, they were concentrated in units expected to face close combat: infantry assault teams, security details, and frontline Marines. Shotgun ammunition, on the other hand, was produced in vast numbers. Contracts ran into the millions of shells, ensuring that troops who had the weapons could keep them supplied. Standard combat loads used 00 buckshot, but slug rounds and smaller shot sizes were available for special tasks. Reports from Pacific battles consistently recognized both the strengths and the weaknesses of the Model 12. Its advantages were clear. In jungle ambushes, the shotgun's instant heavy firepower gave Marines a life-saving edge. In night defense, the pump action's distinct sound alone could deter infiltrators, while the spread pattern made hits more likely in darkness. In cave and bunker clearing, ricochets multiplied the effect, and even when casualties were limited, the terrifying noise often forced defenders to abandon their positions. In final assault phases under 25 yards, the shotgun outperformed bolt-action rifles and sometimes even automatic weapons. But the Model 12 also had limits. Its effective range was no more than 50 yards, making users vulnerable to longer-range rifle fire. Shotgun shells were heavy and bulky, restricting how much a Marine could carry. The weapons also needed frequent cleaning to function reliably in the salt-heavy air of the Pacific Islands. Captured documents and post-war interviews showed that the Japanese recognized the shotgun as a serious threat. Some units experimented with body armor made from wood or bamboo plates to block buckshot. These defenses were awkward, heavy, and only partly successful. Even if they stopped some pellets, exposed areas still left soldiers vulnerable, and disabling injuries remained common. American forces had to constantly adapt their tactics during close combat in the Pacific. Defensive measures by the Japanese included building deeper positions to stop assault teams from breaking through, creating false defensive points to absorb the first wave of attacks, and placing obstacles to keep enemies at a distance beyond the reach of shotguns. Even with these changes, the Japanese never developed a strong counter to American close-quarters tactics. Their main disadvantage was material. Japan's industrial base could not compete with American firepower at any distance. This weakness forced them into the very close-range encounters where the Model 12 shotgun proved deadly. The legal side of shotgun use also shaped its history. In 1918, Germany protested the use of shotguns in World War I, but the United States rejected the claim, setting a legal precedent that made shotguns acceptable in war. By World War II, despite the weapon's effectiveness, Japan never filed a protest. Several factors explain this. Japan's own actions in China had already broken many international laws, leaving little ground for legal arguments. Diplomatic channels had collapsed, and by the time shotguns became a serious problem, Japan was already on the defensive and losing the war. In contrast, chemical weapons such as poison gas, banned after World War I, were never used in the Pacific, even though they might have given tactical advantages in cave warfare. Shotguns, despite their brutal close-range power, stayed within accepted rules of war. The Marine Corps developed specialized training for the shotgun, based on battlefield experience. At Camp Lejeune, the Scout Sniper School included shotgun instruction, though the full details of the World War II curriculum have been lost. Training stressed several key lessons. Ammunition management. Shotgun shells were bulky and heavy compared to rifle rounds. Marines typically carried 50 to 60 shells, often stored in elastic loops on belts or bandoliers for fast reloading. Keeping resupply steady was always a concern. Firing techniques. Pump-action shotguns required different stances than rifles. Troops practiced firing from the hip while moving, point shooting without sights, and staying balanced while cycling the action rapidly. Target selection. Shotgunners were trained to eliminate the closest threats first and sweep across multiple targets. Precision aiming mattered less than fast, aggressive fire. Maintenance. The Pacific climate was harsh. Salt, sand, and humidity could quickly disable a weapon. Daily cleaning and lubrication were necessary to keep the Model 12 reliable. The shotgun was uniquely American in World War II. Other nations took different paths for close combat. Britain used shotguns sparingly, mostly for guarding prisoners or special missions. Their doctrine leaned heavily on the Sten submachine gun. Soviet Union mass-produced the PPSH-41 submachine gun. Over 6 million were built, favoring high rates of fire for mass assaults. Germany, despite protesting shotguns in World War I, made limited numbers for the Eastern Front. Their MP-40 remained the primary close-range weapon. Japan produced almost no combat shotguns, sticking with rifles, bayonets, and traditional blade weapons, shaped by both industrial limits and cultural traditions. The American use of shotguns reflected a practical mindset, using whatever worked best in the moment regardless of tradition. To understand the Model 12, it must be seen as part of a larger system of combined arms. A typical assault on a fortified Japanese position by 1945 followed a clear sequence. Naval guns and bombers suppressed the target. Artillery and mortars blocked reinforcements, machine guns and bars pinned defenders. Assault teams moved in with flamethrowers and demolitions. Shotguns cleared the position at point-blank range, and engineers finished the job by sealing or destroying the stronghold. The shotgun's role was limited but decisive, providing crushing firepower in the final close encounters. Psychological effects mattered as much as physical ones. For American troops, the Model 12 gave confidence in situations where the enemy might break through defenses or charge in banzai attacks. Its reliability and simple mechanics inspired trust, rarely jamming even under stress. The distinct sound of the pump action became a morale booster, reassuring friendly forces and potentially intimidating enemies. Many veterans recalled this sound as a powerful memory of battle. After Japan's surrender, the U.S. military carefully studied weapon effectiveness in the Pacific. The Model 12 and other shotguns were praised for excelling in cave clearing, night defense, and chaotic close-quarters fighting. At the same time, analysts noted limits. Their short range left troops vulnerable in open terrain. They were less effective against bunkers with narrow firing slits, and the bulky shells created supply challenges. Even so, the shotgun remained part of U.S. arsenals. The Model 12 reappeared in Korea, again proving valuable in close combat and night fighting. In Vietnam, it was carried by point men on patrols and used for tunnel clearing, carrying forward lessons from World War II. Its mechanical design shaped later military shotguns. The pump action proved more dependable in combat than semi-automatic systems. The slamfire feature, allowing continuous fire by holding the trigger while cycling the action, was eventually removed from civilian models but remained prized by the military. Evidence of shotgun use in World War II comes from many sources, each with limitations. Official after-action reports provide overviews but rarely mention specific weapon use except in standout cases. Equipment records tracked the distribution but not battlefield employment, and many were destroyed during the war. Technical manuals explained operation but offered no combat detail. Veteran memoirs and oral histories fill gaps with first-hand accounts, though they must be read critically. Together, these sources create the picture of the Model 12's place in the Pacific, an unglamorous but highly effective weapon in the brutal reality of close combat. Japanese sources, Captured documents, post-war interrogations, and surviving records offer some perspective on their side of the war, but these accounts are limited. Many original files were destroyed, and translations often created misunderstandings. Combat photographs occasionally show Marines carrying shotguns, yet these images cannot prove how effective the weapon was in battle. Evidence about shotgun use is scattered and incomplete, which means historians must carefully separate solid facts from myths and assumptions. The use of the Model 12 clearly showed the massive industrial and technological advantage the United States held over Japan. America could afford to produce and supply weapons designed for very specific battlefield needs. Building 61,014 shotguns, a weapon with limited application, while also turning out millions of rifles, hundreds of thousands of machine guns, and tens of thousands of artillery pieces, highlighted unmatched material strength. Japan, in contrast, was struggling just to provide enough rifles and ammunition. The Type 99 rifle was a solid design, but its quality dropped as Japanese factories declined. By 1945, Japanese troops were resorting to bamboo spears alongside rifles, an unmistakable sign of industrial collapse. This gap also applied to ammunition. American forces had the resources to fire shotgun shells freely in both training and combat. Damaged or corroded shells were discarded without hesitation. Japanese troops, on the other hand, counted every cartridge carefully and often depended on captured supplies to keep fighting. Shotgun tactics in the Pacific showcased the American military's adaptability. Instead of relying only on strict orders from higher command, U.S. forces allowed small units to test and refine their own methods. Marines who found useful techniques passed them to others informally, often spreading effective practices by demonstration or word of mouth. Officers later folded these proven methods into training and doctrine. One example was skip shooting for cave clearing. Marines learned that buckshot could bounce reliably off rock walls, letting them hit enemies hiding around corners. This improvised trick was quickly adopted as a standard method. Another was the practice of mixing ammunition loads, alternating buckshot with slugs, so Marines could deal with different targets without switching weapons. Both techniques came directly from battlefield experimentation, not pre-war doctrine. Still, the Pacific War was ultimately decided by much larger strategic forces. American submarines cut off Japanese supply lines. Strategic bombing wrecked their industry. Naval power isolated their garrisons across the Pacific. And finally, the atomic bombs ended Japan's ability to resist. The Model 12 and other tactical weapons played important supporting roles, but they were part of a much bigger picture. Efficient use of shotguns in cave fighting or night defense helped reduce casualties, maintained momentum in assaults, and showed Japanese defenders the futility of continued resistance. Every strong point cleared quickly with the Model 12 meant fewer American losses and faster progress toward key objectives like airfields and ports. The Model 12 story also illustrates how innovation can come from rethinking existing technology. It was already a 30-year-old design when World War II began, yet it became a powerful tool once applied to new tactical problems. The key lessons are clear. User-driven innovation. The best tactics often came from frontline troops, not top command. Specialized versus general-purpose weapons. The Model 12 excelled in close-range fights but had obvious limits. Armies need to balance both, training and technology together. Even the best weapon is only effective when troops are trained to use it properly. Industrial strength. Producing and supplying specialized gear requires a strong manufacturing base. Tactical ideas only work if logistics can support them. Behind all the analysis were the men who carried and faced these weapons. Marines often chose the shotgun over a rifle when close combat was expected, trading range for devastating short-range firepower. Some swore it was the best weapon they had. Others preferred rifles for their versatility. Combat tested both the weapon and the Marines themselves. Slam firing, the rapid-fire technique possible with the Model 12, looked simple in training but demanded strength and focus under real battle conditions. Despite exhaustion, fear, and injury, Marines used the technique effectively in combat. The Winchester Model 12 proved its worth in key roles, clearing caves, holding defensive lines at night, breaking jungle ambushes, and supporting final assaults. Its slam-fire ability gave it unmatched power at point-blank range, something Japanese troops had no effective answer for. Yet its use must be kept in perspective. Only 61,014 were produced, meaning it was always a specialized tool, not a standard infantry arm. Its success came from being part of combined arms tactics, working alongside artillery, flamethrowers, demolitions, and air support. Japan's failure to prepare for or counter the shotgun reflected deeper flaws in their thinking. Their doctrine stressed spiritual strength and individual warrior skill, while downplaying American industrial power and tactical creativity. The Model 12 symbolized the opposite, a simple, reliable weapon used in innovative ways, backed by overwhelming production. From Guadalcanal to Okinawa, the sound of its pump action became part of America's tactical signature. The story of the Model 12 did not end in 1945. Lessons learned in the Pacific carried over into Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Its use shaped U.S. doctrine on close combat firepower, specialized weapons, and frontline-driven innovation. Japanese soldiers had never expected to face pump-action trench guns capable of slam-firing through their defenses. Yet the weapon delivered a blunt message. America would bring overwhelming firepower at every range, adapting every available tool to the fight. In the brutal battles of the Pacific, the Model 12 contributed to victory not by itself, but by what it represented: American readiness to innovate, to mass-produce effective weapons, and to apply them with relentless determination. For Japanese troops, it was a weapon they had not anticipated. For American forces, it was another tool proving that material strength combined with tactical adaptation could crush any defense and secure victory.